Yeah, very good morning, all stations. Tingana Mobile 4 Morning Safari. I'm going to check the music.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome on this sunrise safari here in the Sabi Sands, South Africa. We're on Djuma Private Game Reserve, and as you can all see, it's an absolutely wonderful morning. The sun hasn't quite popped over the horizon yet, but it will be shortly. And Brent is out with James, or James is out with Brent rather. Brent is on camera with James, and I'm teamed up with Andrew this morning, and we're both thoroughly looking forward to the adventure that lies ahead. Now, we are currently situated in the central part of Djuma, and we are going to make our way to the Hyena den site. We're not far from there. James and Brent are checking the northern boundary for any sign of the Nkahuma pride, and they were seen last night by both Brent and myself, and they looked very hungry, so it'll be interesting to see if they managed to catch anything last night. They were looking to head north, so they may have crossed out of our property, but thanks very much to the Zoomy who sent through some feedback from the Djuma waterhole camera. He said he heard lion audio at 1:30 last night and around 4:30 last night, and that's Tammy, sorry, not he, she. So thank you very much, Tammy, for those updates, and thanks to those updates, that's why James and Brent have headed there. So hopefully they'll get lucky, and without any further ado, we shall continue. Now, if any of you may be joining for the first time, a very, very warm welcome. And just to let you know, this is a live safari. Nothing is scripted, and our plans often change. It's not only live, but it's also interactive, and if you would like to ask us questions at any stage, it's really easy. All you have to do is hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. So please send your questions through. We really do appreciate them, and apologies in advance if we don't answer them, all of the questions, but you must remember there are so many people sending in questions that we just try and get as many in as we can. Now already I have been given some information from one of our most useful informers, and that informer is the road. Now, as you look over my shoulder towards the road, you'll notice a number of horseshoe-shaped tracks, which I'm trying to show you. There's a lot there, which means it was a herd of these horse-like animals, which were zebra. It's not very easy to see the tracks now because the sun hasn't come up yet, and without shadows being cast, it's just the habitat that's not quite right for them, and it would be great to see some zebra this morning, so hold thumbs. They could be around any one of these corners. Today we've got Eugene in the director's chair, and Nikki's lending him a hand. I just heard an oxpecker, and I looked back and it's flying up in the sky. I was just making sure that it wasn't perched on any animals of interest to us. Oxpeckers are really good, another really good indicator to help us find animals, or informer you could say. but that one was on its way to try and find some herbivores on which it would land and then begin to pluck the ticks, the ectoparasites off them. I have also seen some hyena tracks heading down this road in the direction of the den sites, so that's also promising. There's no guarantee that the hyena will be at the den sites. The cubs will be there, but when the adults aren't present, the cubs often stay sheltered within the burrows where it's safest for them. So we're kind of relying on the adults being there. If they're not there, then they're probably not much to see. Now I just need to get on the Game Drive channel. I did another vehicle heading out as we went live. You may have caught the end of Deanna's transmission, and she said she was also interested in heading towards the hyena den site. This is a really good road junction to check carefully for any signs of... Interestingly enough, the zebra tracks are now heading in the opposite direction. So we may not see them. They may have moved off into some thicker bush. Diana for Scott.
Morning, Scott 21.
Morning, sorry, I was just going live as I heard you send through your broadcast about heading to the den sites. I'm just making my way down the 2-track towards the den sites. I'll keep you updated.
Okay, copy that. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, it's really important for us to keep in comms with everybody driving around here. We need to work as a team because it's a very large area that we get to search for these animals, and it's important for us to all share whatever information we can with one another. So in about 30 seconds we will know whether the hyena are home or we need to go elsewhere to look for something else. Brent tells me that he seems to think that one of the females is heavily pregnant. I have yet to see it, but he's fairly convinced, so that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing. And I hope he's right. It would be great to have some new hyena cubs. The current cubs are probably around 7 months, 8 months old now, roughly. Oh, we're in luck. But I can only see one hyena so far, but one is better than nothing. And I'm just going to get into a little spot here. We can stop and have a closer look. It's completely relaxed with us. We're probably only 15 feet from the hyena, and it hardly even raised its head as we drove in. And this goes to show how comfortable and habituated these animals have become with the presence of us in the vehicle. And that's taken many, many years of good guiding practice in the Sabi Sands, which has made the animals understand and realize that we are not here to pose a threat to them. We don't help them in any way. We are simply observers. Diana, there's one adult present. I can't see any sign of any other hyena at the moment. So I was just letting...
Okay, copy that. Yeah, I'm on the 2-track now. Would you mind if I join you?
No, not at all. So Deanna's going to come in and have a look. She's got some students out from America who are busy doing a course, and she's going to be joining us here. Good morning, Debbie, and thanks so much for sending your question through. Debbie would like to know, at what age will hyena cubs start to join the clan when they head out foraging for food? And usually it's around a year of age. That would be a typical age where you would expect young hyena to be moving away from the den and starting to get involved and learn the ways of the wild and look for food with the rest of the clan. But there's no set rule. Some hyena cubs will develop faster than others, and the same goes for this scenario right here with the hyena cubs that we've been witnessing. The oldest cub out of the three that are part of this particular clan was seen by Brent at a kill probably about 2 weeks ago. And it was quite far from the den, probably 2 miles away from the den, at a leopard kill. And that cub's probably only 7 months, maybe 8 months old. So a little bit younger than we would have expected. I was very surprised to hear it was that far away from the kill, to be honest. But it just goes to show there's no set rule. They typically, though, do rely on their mothers and will need to suckle, or can suckle, for up to a year in age. Oh, I wonder where this hyena's heading off to. Just going to try and turn around quickly. It looks like it's going to greet the other vehicle. Got a great question through from Katrina in Washington. Good morning, Katrina, and welcome on board with us. Katrina would like to know if a subordinate female or a lower ranking female would ever try and oust an alpha female, and I'm sure that does happen from time to time, but usually in hyena society the title of queen
are sitting here on Jigger, and we have been tracking some leopard. His tracks are still on the road just in front of us, but just in front of us there also is the boundary, unfortunately. Anyway, such is life. We'll carry on following and see what we can find. The plan this morning was to go and check on the pride of lions that we saw last night, and they seem to have crossed north over the boundary in search of whatever prey it is that they're going to try and eat. I'm not sure if they were successful or not. I'm sure we'll get a radio call at some stage. And we're very happy to have you along with us. Please remember you can ask us any questions you like on questions at WildEarth.tv, or you can Twitter handle us. I'm not sure if that's actually a verb. Twitter handle us. Hashtag Safari Live, and we're very happy to have you along. From here, we're going to follow the end of the leopard track, see where they go, and then see what other delights we have. Just to remind you, it is in fact Monday morning, and this is what we do every morning. And we're extremely grateful for the fact that we are not about to climb into some sort of traffic race or train for an office. Behold, our office is all around us. So here we go. We have Brent behind camera. So anything could happen, really. Try and show you a good leopard track if we can find one. You got one there, Brent?
It looks like he went off the road.
So this leopard has walked almost, probably almost 3 kilometers or almost 2 miles along this road. I'm not sure where he's gone. He'll be marking territory. That sort of concerted effort at walking will be territory marking as opposed to hunting. If he was hunting, he would be much more sort of in and off the bush, not leaving nearly as many tracks. I don't have them this side. Where's he going?
Straight for it. Where he goes off.
Probably has gone off to the east there, where there is a glorious sunrise happening. Brent can get you a little picture of that. Although I'm sure you'd rather look at the sunrise than my morning face. Can't see where this leopard has gone off the road. Rather good news. Keep looking up in the Marula trees to see if he's perhaps caught a hapless steenbok and left it dangling there. But he definitely didn't go off into the west as far as I can see. Is a pity. So we're going to go up to the boundary and then turn around and come back up. Temperature, I'm sure Scott told you, is a chilly. Apparently it was about 12 degrees earlier. Fahrenheit, I'm going to have a guess and then I'm sure someone will correct me. That's probably about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which for us is freezing cold. Sorry, that's 57 degrees Fahrenheit. For us it's freezing cold, but those of you in the higher northern climes probably find that a fairly balmy winter time temperature. Right, I'm just going to get out of the car here and have a look and see if I can't find his tracks anywhere. Once I've had this question. So we've got some impala tracks, or, well, they look like they could be impala tracks. Maybe, no, they're nyala, they're a bit big. And here we've got some, can you see here, Brent?
Nope.
Okay. We've got some, here we go. Some white-tailed mongoose tracks. The white-tailed mongoose is a big mongoose that is active only at night. So, as we always like in the morning, the fresh morning dirt is fantastic because it tells the story of what happened in the nighttime, or what happened in the very early morning. So here we can see a white-tailed mongoose crossed north into the reserve in front of us, and Not a huge amount else happened on this road last night. A couple of antelope, but most importantly, no leopard seems to have gone across. So we're going to turn around, head back a little bit up the road there, and then into the Djuma property. Djuma is about 1,000 hectares, which is exactly 2,400 acres, which is not a huge amount. But remember that it is part of 3.5 million hectares, or almost 8 million acres, of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, which extends into Mozambique and into Zimbabwe to the north. And that obviously has its advantages and its disadvantages. From an advantage point of view, we have the full suite of the low-veldt wildlife coming on and off the reserve. From a disadvantage point of view, we don't know where everything is all the time. Just to give you an idea of size, that's the same, it's bigger than Israel, bigger than Wales, it's definitely bigger than the Vatican. Next one, Brett.
No, this one just goes the whole height.
This is a magnificent sunrise. Beautifully yellow. Got a lot of mist out this morning, which made for some lovely colours as the sun peeped over the horizon and heralded another African dawn. There's a bit of cloud around, which is quite unusual. If you can see there, Brent. See, you can catch that tent web spider in the sunlight. You see him? Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Those are called tent web spiders. And what you can see there, the sort of base area, there's a little bulge in the middle if you look carefully. And that's where the tent web spider lives. And just above that sort of bowl, there are a whole lot of threads extending upwards, and those are called knockdown threads. The idea is that the spider will then, at least any prey that the spider has, will fly into that, be knocked down into the bowl below, and then meet a nasty demise at the venom of the tent web spider. So that's contrasts with the other strategy of an orb web, which is basically that bowl flipped 90 degrees, and that's the more common sort of spider we think of. Glorious glistening in the light there. All right, on we go. Last tracks of the leopard around here. There he is. There he is. Now Brent, you see, acts as an extra tracker when he's not filming my ugly mug. But while he is, he can't obviously follow the tracks. So he's come down here. And another one there. Looks to me like he probably headed off east into the vast expanse of the Kruger Park. that is a pity. Just to be sure, we're going to turn off on the next road and we'll drive up, continue driving up north. It's a really lovely, fresh smell about the morning today. The birds are out. The leopards are not. Have a look there on the front. Brenty, oh no, it's flown. There's a Birchall starling, but I think he's missing a foot. Get in there, Brent. The Birchall starling is the bluebird, glistening there in the sun. Yeah, he's definitely missing some piece of his foot. Let's get a bit further forward. Ah, now the sun has hit our faces and the chill of the morning is starting to ebb away. It's not a Birchall starling at all. Looks like a greater blue-eared starling. Yeah, he's missing a couple of digits on his on his left foot. It is astonishing the way animals are able to survive. You know, if you lost a couple of toes and didn't have any medical care, you'd be in trouble. Now, just hearing these birds call, they're actually Cape glossy starlings. The call is often the only way to differentiate between them. The greater blue-eared starling goes, well, something like that. And the Cape glossy starling, I used to teach my trainees, says, Cape glossy starling, Cape glossy starling, Cape glossy starling. Very fast. It often didn't really help them to differentiate. So perhaps I need to work on that. I've also been very remiss in not telling you that the doves in front are called Cape turtle doves, or now ring-necked doves. There are a whole lot of, it looks like a duiker or a steenbok on the front in the front there. On the road. Steenbok. Brenda and I saw 3 or 4 of them together just now, which was quite fun. Unusual. And unfortunately indicated that there was no leopard about to murder one of them. Yeah, there. Now we go deeper into the Djuma Reserve in our quest for all things wild and wonderful. I quite like this part of the reserve because you can see out west to the mountains.
Also, one of my favorites is red.
I wonder if anyone can remember this tree. quite an interesting question. It's a slightly morbid one, but we're going to answer it anyway. You'd like to know, I'm not sure if you're new to us or not, but if you are, it's wonderful to have you, and thank you for your question. If you aren't new to us, it's still wonderful to have you along, and still great to have your question. You want to know what would happen if you were on safari and an animal jumped into the vehicle and bit you? What would you do? Well, Vicky, it depends on the animal, really. Were it a tree squirrel, you'd probably just toss the animal out of the car and say a few swear words. Were it a lion, then you would require some fairly substantial medical help. Let us assume that you survived it. The thing is, though, that the chances of that happening are almost zero. We've been doing this sort of operation in an open vehicle for many, many years in this area, and what we find is that animals don't perceive the vehicles as human beings. We're not really sure why. So if you're on foot out here, true, but they certainly don't. If you were you to come on safari with me and an animal jumped into the car and bit you, I'd wrap you up in a bandage and take you to the doctor. From British Columbia, welcome and thank you for your question. You wanted to know, if I understand it correctly, you're worried that maybe the trust that animals have developed with vehicles like this through reserves like this doesn't put them in some form of threatened situation. No, I don't believe it does. I believe it does quite the opposite, because what it does is it allows us to get close to them and show people who come to visit the wonders of Africa, and they then take the message of conservation back home with them. I'm not convinced that in other areas that animals that have got used to vehicles are under substantially more threat than they would be otherwise. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please send through another one. We're now heading up towards a waterhole, eventually, where perhaps we'll find something interesting. We always tend to gravitate towards the waterholes on the assumption that something must want to drink at some stage. So far we have not picked up further tracks of that leopard coming across, so I think he's gone off into the east, holidaying in Mozambique perhaps. But you never know what we might come across. Francolinos on the road. Crested francolins. There's another one, alarm calling off to the right. It's also sounded like an alarm call of a kudu or a nyala way off in the southeast. See what else you can hear. I'm just going to let it, we're going to be quiet for about 20 seconds and I'll whisper the things that I can hear. So we've got a batis going. We've got a bearded woodpecker in the distance. The francolin alarm calling. Cape turtle doves, oxpeckers. Francolins all around, sort of a background noise, background chorus. Some arrow-marked babblers behind us. Let's move on a little bit. The sky is now the most magnificent blue. Have a lovely bird in front of us calling, one of my favorites, called the white-browed scrub robin. Another good one on a cold morning. The tree I asked you, by the way, is called Ormocarpum tripocarpum, the caterpillar bush. The bird calling over there, the white-browed scrub robin. Daniel from Hawaii. That's the first question I've had from Hawaii. Welcome. Wonderful to have you along with us. I believe Hawaii is the only state in the United States from which you can see the Southern Cross. It's quite interesting. You would like to know, what do we do if we find an injured animal? Do we let nature take its course? But normally we will let nature take its course. If, for example, animals are harmed by some sort of anthropogenic effect, so perhaps somebody set a bushfire that got out of control and an animal got burnt and was in a lot of pain, then we would definitely consider euthanasia. But if it wasn't an anthropogenic effect, normally we'll let nature take its course, which is often very difficult and emotionally heart-wrenching. And there's certainly a lot of debate over whether that is the correct or incorrect approach. So to some people, they might think, well, you know, we must have as little effect on the bush as possible. And I tend to subscribe to that, except to say that the fact that we're here means that we're having an effect anyway. And so we're never quite sure exactly what effect we are having. And therefore to say that we should just leave the animals completely to themselves is to assume that we're almost floating around here invisible and not having a footprint, which I think is also a bit ridiculous. So it's a difficult one. Light as it falls there in front of us. And if you can zoom in a little bit up the road there, Brent. Just a little forested scene that fills me with a sense of well-being. Fantastic dawn light that we find ourselves. To be fairly hard-hearted not to be affected by something like that. A lot of buffalo dung on the road. We're quite close to the waterhole now, where there were about 27 buffalo bulls yesterday. They'll be meandering back there or finding another place to lie up for the day and re-chew their supper. I'm glad we don't have to do that. Hyena tracks. Got quite excited. They might be leopards. They are hyena. Right, we're going to carry on along this way and see what we can find. And I believe Scott has something to tell you or show you, so we're going to cross to him and we'll see you later.
Welcome back, and we are here on the Arathusa airstrip. We've followed the male leopard tracks that were heading in this direction, and there was also tracks of Shadow and Sandile, her cub. heading in this general direction. But we didn't find the leopard, we found the impala that you've just been looking at instead. But it's such a beautiful morning, and they are such beautiful antelope that we couldn't resist sharing it with you. And I think it's worth having a closer look now. They are all showing signs of a little bit of excitement and playfulness. It is the end of the rutting season, but they will still be charged with testosterone and the excitement of that mating period. And even though there's no ladies around, we may still witness a little bit of competitive behavior between them, and you can almost see how they're strutting around in circles. They're not sure what to do with one another. As we arrived and we saw them a few moments ago, two of them were having a little bit of a fight. Oh, look at that! Now the starlings are having a bit of a dispute, and that was a Birchall starling chasing away in all likelihood a greater blue-eared starling, a slightly smaller one. Well, morning, James, and thanks for sending your question through. It's something that we should touch on more often, and therefore it's a great question. James would like to know, why can we not traverse the bordering properties that surround Djuma and Arathusa, the two properties which we are allowed to traverse? And James, the reason for that is simply to ensure that any given area that is traversed is not overpopulated with vehicles and traffic. There's only so many vehicles that can enjoyably drive around certain areas, and in the Sabi Sands, a very established reserve, those traversing agreements are fairly long-standing and have been in place for a long time. We can consider ourselves lucky getting the traversing areas we have on Djuma and Arathusa, because there's such high demand for people to explore these areas, and all of the lodges are very established, and therefore so are the traversing agreements. And you could imagine it would be chaotic if there was too many vehicles driving around, and how would everyone be able to share and enjoy sightings if there was too many people in that equation? So, as frustrating as it can be, don't get me wrong, there's nothing worse than following tracks to a boundary and then waving them goodbye, or even an animal. But it is for the greater good of everybody who is on safari here. It creates a more exclusive and enjoyable safari when the perfect number of vehicles are searching an area. Good question though. Why exactly we can't go wherever we like. Thankfully the animals can, and that's what counts. The animals that we are looking at now could, if they wanted to, end up 200 miles away from here, but still be in a safe, natural ecosystem, which is the Greater Kruger National Park. Important for them to practice, so that when they do turn about 4 or 5 years old, they'll become sexually mature and be ready to compete with other impala for rights over females. And you can see how excited and almost playful they are with one another, jumping around. It's not a very serious fight, but like I say, very good practice for them. And we are quite far away. It's a very big open clearing, so Andrew is at full zoom here. And I'm tempted to maybe even go a little bit closer. Let's try that and see if we can get you closer in on the action. But my guess is by stop. Oh, there they all go running off. And I'll just stop here and let Andrew show them disappearing off into the bush. Oh, they've carried on a little bit with the fighting, but they are generally heading away, and we're going to leave them now and continue towards Arathusa Dam. There are reports of really attacks in that area, so I'd like to head across there and give the guys a hand. I'm guessing that it's probably Tingana, so who knows, next time you see us we may have Tingana, but we're going to cut over to James and catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. I believe you were looking at some impalas with my old friend Scott. I'm just disrobing slightly. Well, I'm not going to disrobe. That would be a sight far too offensive for the internet and the genteel audience which watches us. We find ourselves here at Buffels Hook Dam, and we have found one lonely hippopotamus, and he seems to reside here on a semi-permanent basis, going out only during the nights to eat. I'm not sure if he's hoping a partner will come by for him or if he's in sort of active pursuit, but chances are that he's been tossed out of a pod. He's an old bull who's been thrown out of a pod, or a young bull who's been thrown out of a pod, and he's now living here alone. They're all much like crocodiles. They'll run around in, not run around, they can move big distances at night. And, sorry, I'm just preparing my next trick for you with the help of Brent. They will move big distances at night, so between water holes. So he will potentially find a mate one day. Now, what I've got here, can you see it, Brent? Mm-hmm. Is a torchwood seed and a leatherman. And this seed is supposed to contain a whole lot of flammable oil. That's why it's called a torchwood. We're going to see if that is in fact the case. I may cut my finger off during this process, and if I do, please will you ignore the screaming.
Have a piece of duct tape stuck to
your
body.
Brent's Leatherman, despite its exceptional sharpness, is struggling to get through this quite astonishing seed.
Try the pliers, maybe.
It would no doubt have no problem getting through my skin. Brent has suggested the pliers, which is a sort of more agricultural approach, but we'll try that anyway. There we go. I'm not sure how much oil there is in this seed. I think there's more soil than there is oil in this seed. There we go. Now that burns about as well as asbestos. What a dreadful failure of a trick we've just had. Oh well, one does what one can, as they say. Sorry about that. It smells quite nice. Thank you for your lighter and your pliers. Actually smells really nice. Smells a bit like breakfast, but I don't think I'm going to eat it. I tell you what I think happened here. If you look, Brenty, I don't know if you can get in here. If you look in there, you can see, you might be able to see a whole lot of sort of It looks like sand, but what it is, in fact, it is sand. And there's a hole here. You see the hole, Brent?
Yep.
There's a hole there where some kind of boring insect has gone in. And by boring, I don't mean uninteresting. I mean as in dig a hole. Boring insect has gone in and probably drunk the oil. I suspect it's very nutrient rich. So that's why our little trick failed to provide a fireworks display like we hoped it would. Right, on we go. No tracks coming out here. Beefaloes have clearly decided that they don't need water yet, and they're lying up in the shade. So we're going to carry on pretty much probably north onto the cut line again and just see what's popped out. Dave from Toronto, welcome. Nice to have you with us. You want to know a bit about frogs? I'm not a frog expert, but I'll tell you what I know. We do have a book here that we'll check. But at the moment, very few frogs will be found because it's so dry. But the most common ones in the summer months are things like the bubbling cassina, which make a beautiful call at night, which I'm not going to try and do for you. The banded rubber frog, which is a black and orange poisonous frog, the only poisonous frog that we find here. Then we also have painted reed frogs, which make their lovely calls on a summer night. That's a really nice little soundtrack to the summer that the frogs provide. As we drive along. Great question. Frogs are obviously extremely important indicators of the ecological health. There you are. That is the Goliath frog from Gabon. I'm not sure who's eating who in that picture. And that's the smallest one. That's from Cuba. And that's a little fingernail that he's sitting on. But the Goliath frog is quite something. That would have any Frenchman salivating with delight. I'm sure they probably form quite an important source of food in the Central African regions, the rainforests. And out here, there are the odd people will eat frogs, especially the big bullfrogs. Pride, well, around about where the Umkuhuma Pride was found, crossing north into the property north of us called Buffalo's Hoek, which means Buffalo's Corner. There are some astonishing names in this area. A couple of wildebeest following them, and the odd zebra. of this tree here, Brent.
Which one?
The zebra wood. So this is called a zebra wood, and excuse me, like many of the trees out here, which I've explained before, it grows in these sort of scraggly ways because of the machinations of elephants. So elephants will come and break off pieces. You can see over here, the elephants have broken off various bits and pieces of this tree, eaten it and discarded it. But in areas where there aren't elephants, these develop into quite a sort of medium to large trees, and they've got a gorgeous heartwood that is black and white, and that's why they're called a zebra wood. They're quite favored apparently for making clarinets. I haven't met any clarinet makers out here, but you'd struggle to make a clarinet out of this tree. It's an extremely dense wood. It's one of the most dense woods that we get out here. And the other thing you must be very careful of with the zebra wood, of course, is the spines. Spine is distinct from a thorn in that it's actually a branch with a sharpened point. And these spines are the most dangerous things for your tires. So when we're driving off-road, we try not to run these over because they tend to put nasty holes in our tires.
They win.
And then result in embarrassing tire changing situations. Dalbergia melanophthalon. Plug myself back in. On we go. Get a nice view of the mountain from up here. Might not as well. We've got a very interesting question here from a viewer in Margate, KwaZulu-Natal. I'm going to drive up onto the top of this ridge here and explain it to you because it's an important one, especially in the context of South Africa. So the question is, these people in Margate have visited the Kruger National Park and have found there's been quite a lot of aggression from the elephants. And I'm going to just go through that a little bit. I know that Scott is trying to get into a specific sighting, which will surprise you and delight you, no doubt. So while he's doing that, I'm just going to deal with this question. Like I've said before, no animal in Africa is by default aggressive. An animal only becomes dangerous or aggressive when it is threatened. Now, if we look at it from that point of view, your visit to the Kruger National Park, where you were in a situation where an elephant mock charged, what you find there is that something has threatened that elephant. So in the Kruger, what happens is that you get a lot of people driving around. A lot of them don't know how to respond when they see elephants, and so they might push the animal too far. They may get too close. They may not recognize the signs that where the elephant is saying, "I'm not feeling comfortable, you need to back off." Now, if you're trained, like we've been trained, you learn to pick up on those signs before the situation of what you call a mock charge, and I'll get into that now. But So, for example, if we... Now, what happens in the Kruger is that members of the public drive in, and they're not necessarily au fait with that sort of behavior, but they also tend to be... there are quite a few people who are irresponsible in the park, and they drive too close to animals, they drive too close to elephants, and they've got a big car, so they think the elephant's not going to do anything. And so eventually the elephant becomes threatened, and in so doing starts to display aggressive behavior. Now, when we talk about a mock charge, I don't like the term, because what it implies is that the elephant is not being serious. And the elephant is being very serious. And a so-called mock charge, where the elephant comes with its head up and its ears out, can very easily turn into a genuine charge, where, especially if you're in the Kruger Park, with nowhere to go. You know, you're not in a vehicle like this where you can drive off-road as fast as you can. You can get yourself into some very serious trouble. So the term mock charge is not a good one, because the elephant is not mocking you. The elephant is saying, get out of my space. You are threatening me. I'm feeling threatened and uncomfortable. And if the situation continues like this, I'm going to get serious about it. So it's best to always back off in a situation like that. So to answer your question in broad strokes, where if you'd visit the Kruger again, accept that the elephants are not aggressive by default. I mean, we're in the same area, so we're dealing with the same elephants here. And what you need to appreciate is maybe read up a bit on elephant behavior, recognize the signs, and make sure you understand that if you're with a whole lot of other people, if an elephant is coming down the road and there are 20 cars facing it, you can understand that that might be a threatening situation for the elephant. So I hope that does answer your question. The other thing to realize is that in 1996, they stopped the culling of elephants. Now, at that stage, they were probably shooting up to 900 elephants a year in the Kruger Park. And there's a lot of debate around that, and a lot of it is pointing towards us, the thinking being that it was much easier to threaten an elephant than it is now. Now we can drive almost into the middle of a herd, and they will, you know, certainly if the matriarch hasn't had a bad experience with people, she will just treat us as part of the furniture. But if an elephant has had a bad experience, it takes them a long time to, they don't forget, they remember. And if they've had a bad experience, they can be more easily threatened. But these days, I mean, we're now 20 years after the last cull, just about. And the elephants are pretty chilled out, as they say, unless some tourist has driven in there and reacted in an aggressive way. And I mean, there are certainly elements of society where we have a perception that we as human beings are the dominant animals and they must get out of our way. And, well, you do that at your peril with an elephant walking down the road in front of you. So I hope in a roundabout way that answers your question. Please don't be afraid to come to the Kruger Park and view elephants. You are really under no threat as long as you know how to interpret their behavior, and you can just ask one of the rangers. If you're respectful to the animals, aggression is not a problem. Okay. And that goes for anybody overseas who wishes to come to the Kruger Park. Often, I mean, a lot of these five-star lodges that are around the areas here are beyond the means of most mortals, certainly beyond my means. That's why I have to work here. And so the Kruger Park's an excellent option, you know, really nice budget option for people who want to see African wildlife. And you really have got nothing to be afraid of if you come here on your own. try and get him to try and film us a firefinch, but he'd need a Hubble Space Telescope, I think, to be able to get in close enough to see one.
They're getting garlic to the main area, but also even the boundary or line.
Animals seem to be hiding from us this morning. Very unpleasant of them. Well, here you can see, I don't know, Brent, if we can get these.
You got one in the middle?
We got one in the middle.
Okay, thanks so much.
So this is where the lions crossed yesterday evening. Where are we looking? Here-ish.
Good forward. There you go. No, forward. You're blocking the one I can see. Back between your legs, almost over half a meter. There. No, a bit further back. There we go.
Is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, not the one behind. That's just on the pull bar. Sorry. No.
Difficult working with a cameraman like this. It's very demanding. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right, here's a beautiful lioness track. I'm not sure if you're able to see it from there, but with the genius behind the camera, I'm sure that you are. And this is from last night, roughly when we left them. So they came out of the block here, walked down the road. They were stalking some kudu for a while, and then they crossed north into Buffels Hook. And we obviously can't go in there. And so this is the Nkohuma Pride, which many of you educated me on last week during my first drive. Brent, I don't know, can you swing the camera around and just, there's a beautiful light in the area now that's been sort of, I suppose it's being polarized by the clouds. It's a tremendously warm blue light. And there seems to be a bit of a front moving in, and that's why we have this light coming from the east. Right, now, I believe Scott has something to show you.
And it looks like and sounds like he's fast asleep. And we're just going to stop right here actually, and if Andrew points the camera directly over my fingers, you'll notice the characteristic spots of the leopard. You'll also notice how well camouflaged he is. Now, he's apparently been lying down here for about 10 or 15 minutes. It's impossible to say how long he will stay here for, but I'm certainly looking forward to spending some time with him. He's a beautiful big male leopard, and in a few moments we will try and reposition the vehicle. I'm looking around and he's basically surrounded by a wall of grass, making it difficult to see him regardless of which angle you're looking at. But I've got a feeling he may get up soon, and that'll be great if we can see him on the move. As Andrew zooms out, you'll understand how easy it is to drive past these animals without even knowing they're here, even if they are just meters off the road. Now, it could have been his tracks that we had around the airstrip. Leopards can move large distances in the night, and it's actually not too far from the airstrip here, probably a mile as the crow flies. And it could well have been his footprints that we saw. They were heading in this general direction, but with the amounts of leopard movements and slight changes of territory that we've been noticing over the last few months, it could have been another male. Tingana, which is the name of this leopard we are looking at, is the dominant male of the Arathusa property and surroundings. And Marula is the dominant male of Djuma further to the east, but it appears that Tingana could be pushing further east into Mvula's territory. I'm just going to try and reposition the vehicle now just to allow another vehicle a decent spot. Oh. And we'll see if we don't get a slightly better angle from where we are here. Very good, Lee, very good. Well, that's definitely a little bit better. And what an awesome angle, the way you can see all the spots running along his spine up to that massive neck and shoulders of his. They're incredibly powerful animals, leopards, and this male could weigh from anywhere from 80 to 90 kilograms, I'm guessing. Just to give you an idea of their size, but their power is immense, and they're often said to be one of the strongest cats, pound for pound. Well, he's definitely heard something. It could be something small like a rodent rustling in the grass, or who knows actually, but something has got his attention, and aren't we lucky we've been here just a few minutes and he's already showing signs of getting up. Now, while he peers into the grass looking at something that he could potentially pounce on, I'm going to answer Michelle's question. Michelle sent a question all the way from Oklahoma, and Michelle would like to know if and when will we see another kill. We used to see more, and I think in the last 7 months we've seen about 5 different kills, some made by lion, others by wild dog, and a few from leopard. Just one from leopard actually, I think, which was Marula catching a baby impala. But yes, there certainly is a chance of us seeing another kill. When and where, I cannot tell you, sadly, Michelle. But we've been waiting a long time, and I think we are due for a kill in any of these up-and-coming drives. It could happen at any stage. A lot of the time, kills are made when we are not around, sadly, often at night. But we spend hours out here every day, and I'm convinced we're going to get lucky at some point. It's just a matter of time. Now, what is he going to do next? He's let off 1 or 2 yawns, which is always a good sign, but it appears like he may simply be repositioning himself. he peered up there briefly, and I also looked up into the sky to see what it was he could have been looking at. Sometimes they will look at birds like vultures and use them as indicators to where there could be an easy meal. I'm wondering if I can't go around and try and get a slightly different angle for you. Should I try go around or?
Oh, if you want to go. I was going to go around.
Perfect. So I was just trying to coordinate with the other guides. There's 3 vehicles in the sighting, and that's the maximum that is allowed in any sighting. And just like we were chatting about earlier about traversing agreements, this is another rule that for me makes perfect sense. We don't have too many vehicles in any one sighting. It would put too much pressure on the animals, and we would have too much of an impact on what's going on. But with 3 vehicles managed correctly, it should be fine. And
because he was lying all the time. He was lying there the whole time.
One of the protocols when in a sighting like this with 3 vehicles is that if the animal is stationary, for only 1 vehicle to move at a time. And I was just asking Jason whether he wanted to go around to another angle or if I should, and he's decided to maneuver around. So that's the vehicle you can hear at the moment. Good morning, Lauren, and thanks for sending your question through. Lauren would like to know who is bigger out of Tingana and Marula. It's hard to say. I personally think Tingana is a little bit bigger, but unless we were to put them on a scale, we will only be able to debate as to who we think is the biggest. But good question. It's sadly something that doesn't very often happen, that the leopards get weighed, and I've actually never seen or been around any leopard being weighed, so it makes it very difficult for me to guess or gauge different weights and sizes of leopard, because I've got nothing really to go on other than what textbooks say in terms of general size. But size can vary greatly between males and even females, males ranging from anywhere between 70 to 100 kilograms, and females as small as 25 kilograms. Of the area. He did sit up very briefly earlier and seemed to have heard something rustling in the grass nearby. But difficult to tell what it was, and after a short moments of him being very focused on whatever it was, he decided to have a stretch, reposition himself, and continue his lazy morning basking in the morning sun. Morning, Molly. And Molly sent through her message on Twitter. If any of you would like to do the same, it's quite simple. You just hashtag Safari Live. Molly's heard that another dominant male leopard called the Anderson male, is pushing Tingana further east. So Anderson male occurs to the south and west of here, and to the west of where we are here on Arathusa. I've never seen him, but he's pushing into Tingana's territory, and apparently pushing Tingana deeper into Mvula's territory. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to ask Louis, one of the guides who does spend more time in these parts and has been here for many years, if he knows a little bit more about the Anderson male, and then I'll let you know a bit more about that, Molly. Louis? What's the story? Have people seen any interactions, or?
Yeah, they've been coming together quite a few times, but no real boxing matches. They just kind of walk parallel with one another, size one another up, growling with one another, but no fighting.
Really? Yeah.
But he is pushing up in this area.
And do you think, and is Anderson bigger than him, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Younger,
okay.
Less experience, so he's still giving him a little bit of uphill. So Anderson will back off because of Tingana having more experience.
Okay.
It's just a matter of time that they'll...
And what's the age differences there? Do you know?
About a year and a half or 2 years difference.
Okay.
Anderson is Insequem's son. Insequem used to come in from Marula on the Lodi side.
Okay.
And he's the...
And how old is the Anderson male roughly?
He should be about 8.
Okay.
7, 8.
Okay. Thanks very much, Louis. Well, I'm not sure if you heard what Louis was saying, but it was really interesting. He has said that there have been quite a few sightings of Tingana and the Anderson male together, walking parallel with one another, basically sizing one another up. And that's quite often the case in nature. Before animals will come to blows, they will try and establish who is dominant by visual performances rather than physical performances. And the few times that they have been seen together, even though the Anderson male, who's a year and a half or so younger than Tingana, apparently around 7 years old roughly, even though he's younger and a bit more bold, he lacks the experience of Tingana. So it's hard to say what will happen, but it appears that the up-and-coming Anderson male is going to start putting a bit more pressure on Tingana. But for now, there have been no fights. It may come to blows eventually, but like I say, animals will try and avoid confrontation with other animals or humans at all costs. Unlike us, they don't have medical aid and hospitals to go to, so if they get injured, they know it could be the end of their career. That is the beauty of being out here, though, even though we do know quite a lot about these leopards, especially relative to other leopards in Africa that aren't nearly as relaxed with humans as these leopards are. And because we do get to spend so much time with them, we've got great insight into their lives. But even still, there is so much that we miss. So much happens when we are not around, under cover of darkness, that the few pieces of the puzzle that we have often don't make a clear picture of exactly what's going on. And we often have to play a bit of guesswork into looking into their lives and what we think's going on with their territories and their movements. The only way to find out is to wait and see. And each drive and every drive we go on, there's the potential of great things happening and learning more about the habits and lives of these animals. Well, the sun really is warming up now. I'm about to take my jacket off, and that leopard's got a thick coat of fur on it, so he too might think about not taking his jacket off, but at least moving into some shade. But the shade sadly is not very far away from him, so he's not going to have to move far. But I'm expecting he could move fairly shortly.
Kop 'n bietjie gedraai, so jy kan 'n bietjie beter sien. Maar hy lê nog. He should be about 9 years old. They can go to about between 12 to 16, and then the oldest female we've had in this area was about 19 years old. But yours only had one eye. She was a legend.
The way he's looking around and has his head up, I'm again fairly confident that he is going to get up and move for us shortly, so don't go anywhere. There he goes. What has he heard? That is not him just getting up to move. That is him getting up because he's heard something. And you can tell by his body language that there's something over there that's caught his attention. Well, I'm going to just try and reposition the vehicle slightly. No. He's continuing to move off there. And we will have to move the vehicle now, though. Let's see what he's up to. Louis, thanks very much.
No, no worries.
Where's he going? Now, with 3 vehicles here, it's going to make it a little bit tricky, but there's a brief glimpse we're going to get of him now in the gap behind this vehicle. He's just sitting up looking in our direction. I wonder what it is that he's heard, but it's beautiful morning sunlight, and that right there is a perfect example of an absolutely awesome male leopard. He's got a huge neck and shoulders, and we're so lucky to be seeing him right now. Oh, good morning, Billy Joe in Florida. Billy Joe. One leopard a name, and another lodge gives that same leopard another name. They are usually names related to either habits of the animal, if they are shy or playful or aggressive, or of territories or roads or places where they spend time. Now, I'm guessing there could be a dam or an area called the Anderson Dam or Anderson Road where that leopard may have spent time, but I'm not too sure of why he was called that. And it's something also to bear in mind. We have named Shadow's cub Sindile, but that is just us and you, the WildEarth family, and it's essentially going to be up to the Arathusa and Juma guides to decide on a name for that 8-month-old cub, and they'll usually do that at the time of independence. Anywhere from 18 months to 2 years is typically when the young leopard will be named. good question though, Billy Joe, and as my answer suggests, it's slightly complicated arrangements and can vary from area to area. I'm just going to try and reposition the vehicle. He doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and we'll definitely be able to get a better view. I wonder what it is that he's heard. It could be that he is waiting at this termite mound with the knowledge that there could be something that lives inside of it. Now, as Andrew zooms out, you'll notice there's a large patch of sand that's been well trodden, and I think to the right of that sand is an entrance hole potentially into this termite mound, and it could be warthog that live in there. Male leopard will often lie and wait on top of termite mounds or next to them for warthog to come running out. This specific leopard has also become a master of catching aardvark, which also live in burrows. During the day they're nocturnal, and I'm guessing that he could be waiting for somebody to come out of this hole, if in fact it is an active den site for warthog or something else. It could also be that he can hear something elsewhere, further away. But what you can all see is that he is listening intently, he is very focused, and I think it could be something in this termite mound. Morning, Costa in Greece, and thanks very much for sending your question through. Costa would like to know whether leopards will stay in the same area or if they move around and travel large distances. Now, typically how it works, Costa, is that male leopards, once they are sexually mature at around 5 years of age, will start to try and establish their own territory, and that territory, depending on the area, can range from about 5 square miles to 10 square miles roughly, but it does depend a lot on the area. In the Sabi Sands where we are here, a male leopard's territory will typically be around 3 to 4 square miles, but it does depend on the individual and how successful he is. Now, within his territory, excuse me, there'll be several females potentially, again depending on how successful he is. And females will have smaller territories, 1 or 2 square miles, 3 square miles, depending again on the individual and on the area. Now, within those territories, leopards will move around and explore every pathway, tree, termite mound. There are kind of areas where you may be more likely to find them, but there's no guarantees, and they do always keep us guessing, and that's why it's so difficult to find them, Costa. We can go for days without seeing leopard, not because they're not here, not because we don't know they're around, but simply because there are so many hiding places for them, and they are masters of camouflage and disappearing. Well, we were just chatting about the likelihood of there being some warthog in this burrow that he's waiting patiently at, and you wouldn't believe it, but James has found some warthog. So while we wait here, why don't you head across to James, have a look at the warthog, and we'll be sure to let you know if anything happens here.
and a P. Welcome back to Giga, everyone. You find us with a sounder of pigs, warthogs to be more specific, one of two pig species we get out here, and they are just grazing across this little sodic area, picking out the rhizomes, which are the nutrient-dense and moist underparts of the grasses, and that's what they like to eat. You can see that's I believe you've been having a good time with the leopard with Scott, but we just wanted to quickly show you these guys. That one that you're looking at there is a boar. You can see that from his two sets of warts quite nicely there on the front of his head. He's very suspicious of us, though. I'm just going to try and sneak forward. They are generally quite skittish. So let's just see if we can't get a slightly better view. One of them sat down like a dog. That's quite amusing to see. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before. So it's a sow in front, and you can compare the heads of the sow and the boar by the number of warts they have. Now that's the boar behind that ziziphus tree there. He thinks he's hiding, and he's got two sets of sort of, they're not really warts, but they're protuberances that come out behind his tusks, and they're supposed to, there we go, they're supposed to be for some form of facial defense, I think, when they're fighting over girls. See the little oxpeckers sitting on the sow's back? They're very suspicious of our intentions. There we go. Tails up. Testosterone-driven male is not being particularly brave in front of his family. In fact, he's being positively pathetic. He's just haired off at 100 miles an hour. There you go, the others, followed closely by the oxpeckers. What a lot of people don't realize is that a boar warthog can weigh up to 100 kilograms. So that's 220 pounds. That's a pretty substantial animal. I mean, that's heavier than most human beings. And so they can do quite substantial damage to things like predators who might be after them. So in this area, it is unlikely that a female leopard, for example, would go for an adult warthog because they're quite a substantial threat. Big male leopards, yes, and especially young male leopards, they like to try their arm. But once a boar's got to his full size, there's not much that will take him, except maybe a pipeline. Okay, we're going to turn around now. We did find some leopard tracks on this road, so we're just going to drive back along them. Let's see what we can see. Scott will stay with the leopard he's with, so he'll go back to him just now. You can see a big front coming in front of us there. So that's you can see a cold front that's coming in from the east there, from the northeast, which is quite unusual. So I'm not sure why. That means it's coming in off Mozambique as opposed to from the Cape in the south. So that's quite interesting. But we can just feel a little touch of chill in the air, a bit of a cool breeze coming in front of that cloud bank there. But it has made the light just beautiful. from Twitter, you'd like to know, welcome to this beautifully lit African morning. You'd like to know if warthogs like to live in termite mounds. The answer is yes. Normally, if they've been excavated by an aardvark or aardvark, it's always amusing to hear somebody from the northern hemisphere say aardvark. If they've been excavated by an aardvark where they've left a big hole, termites, at least warthogs, definitely like to go in there. So that's often where they will live, and they'll reverse in backwards so that if a predator sticks his nose in, they simply charge out and bash him on the face.
Check this big elephant mark here. That's where the tracks come back there.
So we're just following up. It looks like a young male leopard, and I'm told by my two colleagues, Scott and Brent, that there were two young male leopards that were in this area, and they haven't been seen for a month or so. And it's quite interesting to see, you know, a male leopard will stay in his mother's territory till he's about 2.5 years old, and then he'll start to roam. But they do often come back. They'll spend up to a month away, and then they'll come back and say hi, and then before disappearing off again. So it'd be quite nice to see one of these young males. I'm not sure you can get an impression, I keep going on about it, but how incredible the light is right now. It's just a stunning kind of yellowy blue golden color. It's wonderful. Were I to see a leopard in this light, I might become speechless with joy. Just giving that question we just had, there's a warthog hole there, or there's a hole there that Brent is laughing because I've just bashed my knee and will be unable to walk for a week. So this hole here, I pointed out last night actually to some people, is where a warthog might live. Good question that. And this is precisely, they'll come in here and then they'll reverse in backwards, having investigated it first, because of course they may find something like a black mamba living in there, and it's not very nice to be bitten on the bottom by a black mamba when you're reversing into your burrow. So when you're walking, it's always, I told a little yarn last night about the time a friend of mine's guest was bashed by a warthog coming out of a hole like this. It's important to make sure that when you're walking in the bush and you walk past a hole like this, you make very sure that there are not fresh tracks of warthog there, because they'll burst out because they don't want to be cornered in the hole. Going to look behind us quickly to see if there aren't some tracks of this leopard. There don't seem to be any tracks. So we're going to carry on down this little road and see what we can see. Sense of peace on a morning like this when the light is so perfect. I'll do a little checkup on the weather later. It's not impossible that we could have very late sort of winter or early winter rains, especially if it's coming off Mozambique. I found something here, and I do not know what it is. Brent, any idea?
Let me have a quick look. I think so.
It's some kind of gall or infection that the tree has got. This is a Combretum tree, probably a variable bush willow, Combretum calinum, and so this, it looks a bit like an insect would have created it, but it's not, it's wood. So it's possible that the tree has been infected by something and just developed a sort of cancerous or tumor or growth. Or it's possible that an insect has stung it, and it's created this thing, rather like the slender ant does with the thorns. But I don't see any entrance holes, and it's quite soft, sort of corky material. It's very interesting. Some sort of tree growth. But I couldn't tell you more than that, I'm afraid. On we go. Right, we're going to hand you back to Scott and the glorious male leopard he found, and we'll see you just now.
God. Welcome back, everyone, and Tingana is still waiting very patiently at the entrance to this warthog burrow. It is in fact a warthog burrow. We know that for a fact because just after you left us to go and look at James and the warthog, I spoke with Jason, one of the guides, and he said a warthog did come rocketing out of this burrow as Tingana walked around. So that would have been what he had heard, but the warthog managed to escape him. Now, that's not to say there aren't more warthog down in the burrow that he could be waiting for. There are also some impala making their characteristic rutting noise nearby that he also listens to, and I'm hoping he's going to decide to rather go and try and catch one of those impala, because if he waits here, he could wait for very long, and it wasn't long ago that he was seen waiting at the entrance to a aardvark burrow. I think that was with Brent for a portion of the time that he spent there. But he spent 24 hours in the same place, waiting patiently for the aardvark to leave, which it didn't, and he eventually gave up. Rose in California has just asked a very, very interesting question, and that is whether leopards will also experience adrenaline rushes just like humans do. And I'm almost certain that they do. Just like us as humans, adrenaline is a very critical function or feature that allows us to perform at abnormally high levels of intensity for short bursts of time, and that's to essentially save our lives. And it's no different to a leopard getting a fright and using that surge of adrenaline to boost it up a tree that much faster or scramble away from any potential predators, and not only that, but also run after prey. So I certainly do think so, Rose, but I have not heard of any official studies on that, so I do stand to be corrected, but I find it highly unlikely that animals will not have adrenaline or something very similar to it, because just like us, they will also need that surge or boost of performance, either when hunting or even escaping predators, sorry. Now, I'm not entirely sure how much longer we can stay here for, because the radios aren't working, and therefore I'm not sure if there's pressure for other vehicles coming in to have a look at Tingana, which there very could well be. I'm going to stay a little bit longer though, and then hopefully we can head off and find something else, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of guests driving around on various vehicles that would all love to have a look at this beautiful leopard. And it's important for us to share sightings with all the vehicles, just like they've shared this with us. Well, morning Angie in Ohio, and thanks for sending your question through. Angie would like to know if there's been any interaction recorded between Tingana and Mvula. And for those of you who don't know, Mvula is the dominant male to the east of where we are here on Djuma. Here we're on Arathusa, which is west of Djuma. And not that I'm aware of, I haven't heard any solid updates where people have actually seen Tingana and Mvula interacting with one another. That's not to say it hasn't happened, and I'm almost certain they would have brushed paths and shoulders at certain stages, because their territories do essentially overlap ever so slightly on the fringes. They're not clear-cut pathways or fences like we have around our houses. There's often a few grey areas. Now, I'm not sure, though, sadly, whether Mvula has been actually seen interacting with Tingana and what would have happened in those interactions, but the amounts of time we're spending out here, it's going to happen sometime. I've actually never seen male leopards interacting unless it's father and son. I've never seen two dominant males in the same sighting before, and that's having spent now 4 years in an area where leopard viewing is great. This area that we're in, the Sabi Sands, is one of the best for leopard viewing in Africa, and even still there's certain things that I've yet to see. Well, it appears that he has really got comfortable here, and like I say, he could spend 24 hours here, which is not a problem. I would be happy to sit here for 24 hours, but the problem is that we do need to make space for other vehicles, and I think now would be a good time. It's not looking like anything could happen. Having said that, though, at any stage a warthog could come rocketing out of that hole and action could unfold, but I think we're going to move on. I'm going to answer one more question, and then we'll go out and see what else we can find. Well, morning Brenda in Virginia, and thanks for sending your question through. Brenda would like to know whether this is the father of Shadow's cub, Sindile, and yes, in all likelihood he is the father, or he simply thinks he's the father. If he wasn't under the impression that he was the father, he would have killed that cub and therefore allowed himself the opportunity to get his genes into his territory, which is typically how it works. Now, it is in all likelihood that it is Tingana who is the father, but it's not uncommon for leopardess to mate with several males and give them the false sense of fathership, which therefore increases the cub's chances of survival. as it doesn't matter which dominant male comes across. Well, we've really been so fortunate with the big cat sightings over the last few days. Yesterday morning we had Shadow, Brent at the Nkuhumas, then last night in Nkuhuma Pride of Lion again, now Tingana. So the quieter drives we did experience for the last couple of weeks are now we're not cashing in for the credit we accrued while all the animals were dodging us. Well, while Andrew and myself continue searching for anything exciting to share with you, we are gonna suggest that you head across to James and see how him and Brent are coming along, and we'll keep you updated if we find anything exciting. See you later.
Welcome back to Giga, everyone. I hope you had a great time watching the leopard with Scott. I wish we had found a leopard today. Unfortunately, we haven't. The tracks of the male we were following have disappeared, and we are now on the trail of some elephants, I hope. But as the weather closes in like this, animal finding tends to become more and more difficult. And there's definitely a front coming in from the east, which is going to make things a little hard, but that's not to say we won't find anything. And we're looking quite hard for elephants, as I say. We're looking quite hard for any mammal, really. And the only mammals we've seen today have been the old steenbok and those pigs we showed you. And what else have we seen? And I think we saw an impala, one impala. So not a huge amount going on. Plenty of hyena tracks. It would seem that if you want to see hyenas, you have to knock about here in the night time, and there'll be hundreds of them everywhere you look. But it's still wonderful to be out here, where the air is fresh. The smell of the winter dust is great fun. And we've got a little bushbuck in there, spotted by the inimitable Brent Leo Smith. That's quite sweet, a little bushbuck lamb. Very sweet. Quite relaxed. Unusually, did you see the mother, Brent?
Mm-mm. Just saw her.
Little baby on his own. You'll want to watch out with the leopard. At this stage of the day, I've normally taken me woolly hat off me head, but because it's a bit chilly, I'm going to keep it on for now. So the temperature is not warmed up like it would normally. Maybe time for the almost impossible tree quiz. So if I find one, I shall give it to you and congratulate myself heartily if no one gets it right. I may try and find one that'll stump me cameraman as well. Here, it's not wildly exciting. In fact, it's on the edge of exciting and tedious, I would say. But they say that it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this grass bush. And I'm going to see how exciting I can make a grass bush sound to you. This is Themida triandra, red grass, the most important grazing grass in all of Africa. Themida triandra, as you can see, has 3 magnificent heads on it. Beautiful heads of seed. And the most important grazing grass in Africa is an indication of the health of your grazing lands. For the red grass leaves down here are what all grazers desire. And I'm in fact being quite serious. This is the most important grazing grass that we have in southern Africa. It's called red grass, and all the animals out here, especially in the summer months when it's fresh, will come and eat it. And one other interesting thing is that often people think of that this is what animals eat. Animals will normally go for the leaves. So here are the leaves on this grass are these bits here, but the stalks, once a grass has got to this stage, most of the nutrition is pulled out of the leaves and into the seeds. And so once it becomes like this, it's a bit like straw. So most of the animals will try and avoid it. So that is red grass, Themida triandra. And you can let me know if you thought that that was the most exciting thing we've seen all day. Of Themida triandra around this area. Doesn't appear to be attracting much except a cold front. Brent says left. An impala up ahead. We're going to go, and we're still following up on the elephant tracks we had. We're going to head up north towards some clearings. Now that impala is indicating to you how chilly it actually is. I'm going to try and get a little bit closer to him. He's doing something quite interesting. Doing something UI. Yeah, there are 2 interesting things about that impala that I can see. The first is that you can see how dark he is, and that's because he's lifted all of the hair up on his back. He's fluffed himself out a bit like a bird does in the morning, to trap as much air underneath him as he can, and so remain warm. The other thing to note about him is you can see his hip bones are sticking out. Now that is a very common state for an impala, big male impala at this stage of the year. Remember, he spent the last 3 months trying to herd females into sort of nursery herds that will allow him to mate, and impala forget to eat and they forget to look out for predators. And so they will lose condition quite a lot in the months leading up to the mating, which has just occurred. You can see he's not looking in great shape, that fellow. He's probably also had the odd fight. He might also be a bit old. The last few months have definitely taken their toll on him. If I'm not mistaken, he was selecting Thermida triandra for his morning snack. Right, on we go. Just to remind those of you who wish to interact with us, and we do, I must reiterate, we love having. There are only very stupid answers, and we're not, yes, some questions do make us giggle a bit, but we love to share our knowledge, and we love to share everything about Africa with you. And while some of the questions might make us giggle a little, it's not because they're stupid at all. It's only because the frame of reference from which somebody who's never been to Africa is viewing this is obviously quite difficult for us to understand. So please, any questions you have, we'd love to hear from you, and we're more than happy to try and answer. And if we can't answer them, we'll find someone who can, or find a book or a website that'll do it for us. And we also especially like to hear from our younger viewers. New champions of the wilderness, people who might be inspired to go into a career in conservation. We'd love to hear from you too. Just going to turn off here and listen for 20 seconds. Off to my right is one of my favorite birds. We'll see him. Just listen carefully. There are a whole lot of them calling around here. There he goes. Get him, Brent.
We can hear them nicely.
So that is the call of the white-browed scrub robin, but it's sort of, I'm not sure if it's an alarm call or if it's a, I'm not sure what it is, but they'd normally do it when, just as the sun has set, and they make that churr sound. There are a few of them doing it now.
If you go back, he's moved.
Okay, he's moved. Yeah, but filming birds is not easy, especially when they're the size of your hand. But his normal call is that very lilting. Lovely sort of midday, hot, relaxing, soporific sound. Look at this knobthorn tree on our left-hand side here. A bit easier to film than a white-browed scrub robin. Well done, Brent. This tree is in a state of bother, and that's because an elephant has come and dug his tusk in here, pulled off a strip and ripped it up and almost stripped an entire side of the tree. And unfortunately, this isn't a very fresh one, but if we break stuff off, Here we go. Here we go. You can taste this. You can see, can you see the sort of fresh cambium layer there, Brent? Okay. Now that fresh cambium layer is what the elephants are going for. And while it's not delicious by any stretch, but you can definitely taste why an elephant would eat that. Right. Everything is proving elusive today, except the trees and the grass. Thank goodness for them. Chicago, you have asked a question as to how far away is Scott from me that I am dressed in a woolly cap and jersey and he is dressed in his shirt sleeves. The answer is not far enough for the latitude to make a difference to the temperature we're experiencing, but we are, remember Scott's been sitting in one place for much of the morning and we've been driving around, and so if we were sitting still, yes, it would certainly be comfortable enough to wear maybe a long sleeve shirt without a jersey. I mean, it's not freezing by any stretch. I'm wearing short pants. I do have exceptionally hairy legs, which sort of provides leg warming. But we're not far away. Scott is obviously extremely tough and manly, whereas I tend to be a bit afraid of the cold. I've had a question from Frikkie in Rutting, which is a spot just outside Johannesburg. He'd like to know about the herd sizes of antelope that we get in this area. Frikkie, you've mentioned seeing herds of antelope of up to 300 strong in the Kruger Park. There are certainly areas of the Kruger, especially in the south or on the Gabbro Plains, where in the summer months they will attract sort of larger concentrations of animals. The vegetation here is different, so we're in sort of woodland areas, and we will get herds of buffalo. There was a herd of buffalo of about 200 strong yesterday, and we also get fairly large herds of impala. But it is a woodland habitat, which means that the herds will be slightly more fragmented than they might in parts of the Kruger where you've perhaps visited. much in the way of birds to show you at the moment. Kevin from Boston has asked a question that might, to a more sensitive soul, be perceived as slightly offensive. Thankfully, I've lived with Brent for a while, so I have a very thick skin. He would like to know, what do animals do if they have broken bones, horns and teeth, like my broken nose? Well, first of all, Kevin, my nose is not broken. If you would like a view of it. There we go. I'm not sure why it's that shape. It's probably some form of genetic defect. It's a Greek nose, although I'm not Greek. Secondly, and more importantly, animals out here deal with broken bones. They can survive just about anything. So if an animal breaks a rib or something like that, it might be able to survive. It just depends on whether they have enough to eat and whether they can avoid predators at the time. If they snap, say, a femur, then they're going to die. There's no way for them to survive that. But a broken horn tends not to be any form of desperate. Got some hyena tracks here. A broken horn is not a desperate injury, and animals will often survive. So we often see one-horned impala or one-horned buffalo, and they get on just fine. And like I say, I've seen a monkey that's had it's had a leg severed and its hand broken, so totally useless, hanging useless, and it survives fine with just 2 limbs. Obviously, that's not going to be the case for an antelope. It might be the case for a wild dog, because a wild dog's obviously got a pack, and the wild dogs will look after their sick and injured. But something like a lion, for example, that gets injured will be left behind by the pride and will die if it breaks a leg.
There's a 3-legged hyena in the village.
And there we go, and Brent's just told me about a 3-legged hyena that he knows of that survives fine. Just like I survive with my broken nose. Thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out to everybody. Send a picture of yourself, and I'll have a hard judgment. I'll have a hard judge at your profile. I'm afraid we're going to have to look for more trees in the absence of mammals. This is a Combretum apiculatum tree, or red bush willow. And you can see, Brent, if you just have a look at the base of the tree, you can see there that when this tree was birthed from the African soil, it was never meant to grow at the angle at which it's growing now. And as with so many trees out here, an elephant has had a go at it, pushed it over, and it started growing at an odd angle. But you can see I'm sitting now amongst a whole lot of branches that are growing horizontally or vertically towards the sky. And what happens is trees like this branch that I'm sitting on will slowly lose its importance to the tree, because the main branch or the main trunk, if it isn't attacked again by elephants, will start to develop from all of these tree branches that are now growing up towards the sky. So it doesn't matter, there's so many trees out here, it doesn't matter really which angle you push them or place them, they will eventually stick a shoot out that grows towards the light. An amazing adaptation that I think has probably evolved purely so that they can deal with the elephants in this area. Wasn't much of a tree climbing expedition, that, but nice to get close and personal with the vegetation. Down towards the water hole and see what's come to drink there. Perhaps a beefalo or two, perhaps 35 lions, 400 wild dogs, perhaps just the odd bird. Plenty of hyena activity on the Bush newspaper from last night. Another one of those growths. See that, Brent? Let me go and have a look at this one. This might give us a better indication. For those of you who've just joined us, we found one of these a little while back. It's looked to be a growth of some sort on the tree. This seems to have been definitely bored into by an insect or two. So it's quite possible that it's created by an insect that has stung the tree and infected it with something, and it's created this growth of the ball. I'm quite tempted to break it open and see what's there, but we'll probably disturb what's in it. And maybe I'll just take a little piece off the top. That's what I'll do. Thank you. It looks like it's pretty uninhabited, these top pieces here. No, it's all vegetation in here. There are no larvae of animals. So it would seem to me that the holes here have come from wood borers that have come probably maybe subsequent to the gall developing. There, you can see in there, it's quite green. It's like the normal flesh of the tree. See that there? So often, like on a terminalia tree or a silver cluster leaf, you find galls from a gall moth. But if you open them up, you'll find the larva of the moth. But here there are no larvae or caterpillars. Thank you, Brent. Not only is Brent a great cameraman, there's a walking toolbox. forgotten about the almost impossible tree quiz. I just haven't found an almost impossible tree yet. Sherry in California has asked a very interesting question. Is this a part of Africa where prehistoric discoveries have been made? Absolutely. It doesn't seem to be a hotbed for dinosaur fossils, but certainly this part of Africa contains many ancient human remains and remains of our ancestors pre the Stone Age. And away from this particular area in South Africa, we have many sites of sort of dinosaur activity, and we have many sites of very ancient human activity or hominid activity, the most famous of which is the Sterkfontein Caves, which are just outside Johannesburg, and they're a whole limestone complex of limestone caves, where the most famous discovery was that of, I think it was Raymond Dart who found it, of an Australopithecine called Australopithecus africanus, which means southern ape man. And Australopithecus was dubbed Lucy. They called her Lucy, and she's a sort of sub-adult hominid that gave her, I hate to use the term missing link, but was certainly one of the links between us and our ancient ancestors that diverged from the chimpanzee. And there's certainly many others around the country, in Taung and various other places. And then in a cave, and I think it's Blobos in the Cape, there we have some of the first, if not the first, evidence of anatomically modern human beings. So that's us. And that's probably from about 200, I think it's 180 to 200,000 years ago, where modern man as we know it, or know him or her, walked out of a cave down there in the Cape. So South Africa is a hotbed mostly of human origins. We're going to cross across to Scott, who seems to have found some water at a waterhole, which is not unsurprising. So we're going to cross to Scott, and we'll see you a bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and what a beautiful scene it is here at Treehouse Dam. We've been watching this massive bank of clouds approaching from the east, and it was the same bank of clouds that we saw at the start of the drive, but it's moved very far and is now also keeps things nice and cool, so the likelihood of animals being active during the hotter parts of the day is increased. But they're not going to be easy to see, so we're going to continue and see what else we can find. I am sad that I missed the operation that James has just been performing on a tree, dissecting it to show you a little bit more closely as to what exactly was going on there. Sounds very interesting, and I hope you enjoyed that. He does have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure all of you are enjoying having him on our team. And just a reminder there is another interviewee coming. He'll be arriving today and we'll be able to...
Because Wendy's a treehouse dad.
Yeah.
Oh, we're back. You're back with us. You're back with us. Scott's satellite was hit by a Martian spacecraft, and so you're back with us. We're on some elephant tracks. They're almost as old as some of the fossils I was describing to you just now, and so we probably won't find them. But we are still lurking about in the area where we saw those male leopard tracks earlier, hoping to bump into something exciting. Well, not bump into them, obviously, or see them. Elephant dung on the road. Ooh, quite nice. It's a tortoise. It's alive.
Yeah.
Brent says it's alive.
Drive up to the side of the driver. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try and get into a position where we can film it and have a conversation about it at the same time. Brent, if that tortoise is alive, I will eat my hat.
Just checking if you're awake.
This tortoise... this tortoise... In the words of John Cleese in the parrot sketch, is no more. This tortoise is X. This tortoise is not... Ooh. I don't know. We'll probably get in trouble for showing the viewers this, but I don't know if you can see in there.
Hang on a second, I just need to change the settings.
Change a setting and have a look. This tortoise is certainly not that long dead.
Maybe try a torch. Yeah?
So what's interesting, yeah, I'll do it. Oh no, you've got a... Brent has just purchased himself a torch that will probably be used as a... used to be used as a searchlight for enemy bombers. You see in there?
Hold the shell down towards me a bit more. Just... Sort of, yeah.
Sort of, okay. So you can see the tortoise's innards are sort of liquefied in there. It's really pretty unpleasant smelling. In fact, I probably won't eat for the next week. But that was a leopard tortoise, and I'm really not sure what killed it. It's been eaten out from the inside, so something's got in there, but nothing's broken its shell. So it's possible it was bitten by something. It's possible maybe its head was grabbed by a bird or something like that, and then the bird ate the rest of it out. But it's difficult to say what killed it. Certainly the shell is entirely intact, so I suspect what happened was that the head was taken, and then the rest has been eaten out by carrion eaters, flies and maggots and delightful things like that that you want to hear about just before you have your meal. Right, I'll be washing my hands before we get home, or when we get home. But unlike first thought, that tortoise is well past his sell-by date. Ceased to exist. So it would seem that the Martian spacecraft that took out Scott's satellite has in fact absconded with the satellite, so Scott won't be back with you this morning for the remaining 6 minutes. You will have to look at my broken nose. Thank you for that, Kevin. Also, tomorrow morning we have a new fellow trying out as WildEarth expands, so we need to expand the number of presenters and guides that we have, and his name is Chris. So I would ask that you all go easy on him. Kevin, don't make any comments about his nose if you don't mind, otherwise he may never come back. He'll be on tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. I think with just in the morning, sorry, Brent is eyeing me with big goggle eyes. So just the morning, and I think the other person out will be me at the time, so we'll be out together. Please welcome him with your normal friendliness, and let's see how he gets on. See how the front has now come completely over the top of us, and while it's not cold, it means it won't heat up like it normally does on the normally cloudless, low-felt winter days. Still searching for the almost impossibly tree quiz. Nothing's very almost impossible around here though. Especially for you lot, who seem to be able to identify trees on sight. It's very impressive. Boston, thank you for your comment. I shan't repeat it on live, but I forgive you now for your nose comment completely. Thank you very much. Further leopard tracks, which is quite unusual. They're definitely hunting, perhaps. Good reasons. Firstly, it's difficult from a technical point of view. It's not that easy to film at night. There is and lighting and that sort of.
Where?
Straight on the road.
I think he's chewing on the seed of a Marula fruit, trying to get into the nuts inside. Anyway, there's not much longer of the show. Yeah, I think he's digging out old Marula seeds from the road. Awesome. And we don't get to see baboons very often, but hopefully we'll get to see him again this afternoon. He's very close to our camp, and what a good way to end another wonderful morning out here on Djuma and Arathusa. I hope you've all enjoyed this safari, and we've certainly enjoyed having you with us. Thanks so much for all of the questions that you've been sending through, and we look forward to this afternoon's adventure with all of you. So please tune in, and a big thank you to Eugene, who directed this morning's show in Final Control, and to Andrew on camera. We'll see you all a bit later on.